Hi there and welcome to the Sector Report here on Country 99 TV. Today's program is devoted to growing grain, but with a new concept, zero tillage, in which the soil is simply left alone and not turned at planting time. Quite a few grain growers in New Zealand are taking an interest in this technique, and they're looking at cost savings and soil health when they do so. I'll be talking to Ed Winkle, an American grain farmer who's a leading light in the zero tillage movement in the United States and is out here to pass on his knowledge and his wisdom. We also visit a North Waikato maize grower who says zero tillage is the way of the future for him. But first, Ed Winkle from the Eastern Corn Belt in the United States. Well, Ed, welcome to New Zealand and to this program, the Sector Report here on Country 99.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, just very quickly, if you can just tell me about your operation back in Ohio.
Okay, I'm a retired ag teacher, and retired in 2002, and we just started farming a larger operation in 2004, and it's grown considerably from 50 acres originally to my partner and I now have 3,000 acres. I have 1,300 acres under cultivation this year.
So what crops are you growing?
Corn, soybeans, and wheat. This year I have my first field of barley for a specialty market near my farm.
And what happens to those crops?
They are, my soybeans are used for tofu in Japan. They're non-genetically modified. My corn is non-genetically modified and used for shipped to various countries for many purposes, for all kind of corn products. We do not ship to the ethanol plant yet. That's about 30 miles away, but that's a consideration. And the wheat is used for Oreo cookies. Nabisco buys the wheat and make them into the famous Oreo cookie.
So you can command a bit of a premium because your
Yes.
grain, unlike most of America's produce, is non-genetically modified.
We found weed resistance with glyphosate about 5 years ago, and we saw that it becoming a problem. So I switched back to the program I'd been on before '95 when the Roundup Ready seeds came out. And because contracts were being offered to pay the farmer a premium, so we went after the contracts, hoping to get better weed control and increase our bottom line with the premium.
Now let's go on to the main topic, which brings you here to New Zealand, and that is zero tillage. Can you just tell me how long it's been around in the States as a cropping technique?
It was started in Kentucky. Actually, there's a placard at a farm in western Kentucky where it was first done, early 60s. And my father and I were livestock farmers south of me, about 30 miles south of me. And we never had enough time to pay attention to the crops. All the crops went to the livestock that was walked off to the farm and sold to the various markets. So labor was a major consideration for us. We didn't have time to pay attention to it. So we rented our first no-till planter, and the rest, they say, might be history.
So is it very widespread as a planting technique in the U.S.?
Early on, the neighbors thought we were losing our minds. But as more and more farmers tried it and neighbors saw success, we have advanced rapidly in the last few years to where 70% of the soybeans in America are no-till, 50% of the cereal grains are no-till, and about 25% of the corn is no-till.
Wow. So we get down to the practicalities then. How exactly does no-till work?
No-till, thanks to advancements in technology, we finally have planting equipment where we can do a good job like we did with many tillage operations. We can do that with one pass now with the planter. It basically plants the seed into undisturbed soil, and you control the residue with cover crops or control the weeds with chemicals. And you'd think we use a lot more chemicals on no-till than you do with tillage practices, but actually we've got our farm down to where we use less than some of our neighbors. So as you're in continuous no-till, your soil gets healthier, your crop grows faster, the weeds have less chance to compete, and it takes a good 3 years to see the real benefits. I saw them the first year, but as you go to 5 years, 10 years, the system just works easier and easier for me. I've been in now for over 10 years, and you can see the improvements.
So how does it work? Does the machine actually drill a hole in the soil at equal intervals and then a seed drops in and they...
My corn planting is what I'd call one-pass strip till.
Mm-hmm.
We're tilling up a strip about 4 inches wide, and removing all the residue without disturbing the soil. We gently open that up just like the normal corn planter would. I plant down to that knuckle about 1.25 inches deep to the seed, and we gently firm and till that seed with the attachments on the planter. So when you're done, it looks like a perfect 4-inch garden pass, a garden tilling pass. But you've got all your residue in the other 26 inches to protect the seed from heat, too much rainfall, etc.
Now, if you look at the spin-offs, obviously there have got to be advantages in it because you wouldn't do it. I mean, it's good for the soil, it's good for cost savings, for labour savings, would that be right?
Yes, a lot of people ask me, how do you get farmers to convert? And I says, I cannot make farmers to convert. So our theory now is we speak with our fields. We befriend other farmers. If they ask questions, we try to answer them. If we don't have the answers, we refer them to someone who might. But it's a thing where you have to look at it, study it, and feel comfortable with it before you invest into it. I can't come to your farm and tell you that you should be no-tilling. That just doesn't work. The farmer's always been an independent businessman. So he has to see the benefits, and now the movement has grown so fast in the States, there's numerous sources of help that can help you make the switch successfully, because a lot of us made the mistakes early on, and we've already paid those prices.
Now, talking about paying prices, there are obviously huge advantages, but everything has a downside. Does zero tillage carry any disadvantages with it?
You know, I've seen, always study the Ohio State University budgets. I use that to help plan my budget for the year. I want to go to my banker to borrow money, and my cost of production is always less than my tillage neighbors. So that gives me a big cost advantage right there. My goal is to produce as good a crop as they do for less money. The main selling point to no-till to me is net profit. How can I make myself more net profit? How can I help the farmer that asked me make more net profit? It has to pay for itself.
Absolutely. Now, finally and briefly, of course, mankind has been tilling the earth for thousands and thousands of years. Does this zero-till approach with its advantages mean that actually we've got it wrong over history in turning the earth over?
I guess the positive way to say it is we've learned our lesson, and now we've figured out how to do it like Mother Nature does without that catastrophic event of tillage that exposes the bare soil to all the elements, and we can do the same thing like Mother Nature does, working more in harmony with her. So I see it as positive.
And yeah, a very, very positive story. So look, fascinating insight, Ed, and I do hope you enjoy the rest of your time here in New Zealand.
They've got a big schedule for me. I hope I can do everything that they need me to do.
I'm sure you will.
I'll try.
Ed Winkle there, out from Ohio, to pass on his knowledge. We'll be back in a moment to look at the practicalities of zero tillage for maize planting. Good for the soil and good for cost savings.
American Ed Winkle from Ohio and New Zealander Chris Pello from Tuakau, pioneers in zero tillage, a revolutionary cultivation technique designed to save our soils. Ed Winkle has been a crusader for soil health for many years, and Chris Pello is one of the first New Zealand farmers to make a success of the zero tillage technique.
I guess I really started looking at it from a soil health perspective, and couldn't see the point of continuously ploughing fields that were already level. Ploughing them just to bury residue didn't make sense to me. Doing all that soil disturbance for shifting a huge amount of soil for no real gain.
So when did you plant this corn? What you call it maize, we call it corn.
Yeah.
The Pellos have farmed this area near Tuakau for more than 100 years, running livestock and growing vegetables, before Chris got into maize about 15 years ago.
I've been growing maize continuously since 1995. Yes. Yeah, just really enjoy growing maize.
His dad was the seller and cleared this land?
Yes, yeah, yep.
Chris crops up to 80 hectares a year and also contracts to other farmers. His results vary from year to year.
It's marginal, I'm not going to deny that. We don't make a huge profit out of it. And that's one of my goals of going to no tillage again is to, or staying with no tillage even, is to reduce costs and still maintain yields.
Chris says there wasn't a particular eureka moment behind his decision to adopt zero tillage.
Really concerned about soil health. I've seen other soils around the place that have been cropped for a long time become or change to a very degraded state. Didn't want to do that to my soils.
So this was planted a few days after the field across the...
At the moment I talked to a lot of people, did a lot of research, got on the internet, learnt as much as I could. Seriously looked at going strip till, which was starting to get going at the same time I looked at getting into no-till. Felt that strip till still added cost. If we could cut that extra pass out and go straight to no tillage, that had to be a better way around things, and it replicates more what Mother Nature does. It's been an interesting journey, and we're still learning, and it's a journey we're continuing to travel on.
Did that worm cause those, or is that another organism?
Possibly a worm, yes.
So when you sell some of your corn for silage, you're taking off the whole stalk. How do you come back with enough residue to keep meeting this goal of turning residue into organic matter?
By planting a winter crop.
Okay.
Chris began in earnest in 2003, planting a very small area. He's pleased with the results.
Huge improvement in soil health, good earthworm numbers. Plant health is really showing a huge improvement this year. We've certainly maintained yields. I do, in conjunction with Pioneer and their strip trial program, I run a comparison with tillage and no tillage. We've maintained yields across those two trial areas.
So you look for eye spot protection?
Yes, yeah, look, the total disease package is a main consideration.
Have you seen any problems in the corn whatsoever?
Any
problems?
Problems, no.
A little bit of pollination looks good, the ear development is good, so it's changed color. We can already predict this crop's development by counting the plants in a row, figuring the population. We can put our thumbnail in there, you can see the blister. Yep. Count the kernels this way and the rows around. Should be good shape. Looks good.
That's good, that's what we want.
Chris's research took him to the USA, where zero tillage, or no tillage as it is called over there, was growing in popularity. And it was on a farm in Iowa that he first met Ed Winkle, one of North America's no-tillage pioneers.
It's a passion. Nothing's better than walking through a cornfield in summertime. Yep. And it's cold and snowy in Ohio, and here I am in summertime. It seems like a miracle to me.
The two became instant friends.
We're just good friends.
We're good friends. We hit it off well. We've hit it off well.
Sometimes two people meet and they just hit it off naturally. We did, and he wanted to go what I'd already tried. I'd made some mistakes. I hate to see a younger fellow make the same mistakes I did. So I offered my help, and I took him to the best farmers I could find, and it's worked out well for both of us.
And the rest, as they say, is history. Chris is now one of the pioneers of zero tillage in New Zealand. For him, there is now no turning back.
What I do here is not going to save the planet by any means, but I want to leave this property, my soils, in as good a condition as I can for the next generation to come along.
Welcome back to the Sector Report. Well, my final guest today is Mike Parker from the Foundation for Arable Research, who's based here in the Waikato. He brings us up to date on what research FAR has been doing in this area of zero tillage for maize growers. Right, well, Mike, welcome to the program. Now, what work has FAR been doing on this whole question of zero tillage for maize growers?
Well, it's a fairly new concept in terms of maize growers. So we've got a arable site down at Waikato, and for the last 3 years we've been doing some replicated trials with zero tillage and also strip tillage and what we call conventional tillage.
Yeah, before we go any further, strip tillage, can you explain that?
Strip tillage is actually just narrow strip of land where the maize is planted, so maybe 150 metres wide.
Millimetres.
Millimetres wide by about 250 millimetres deep. So it's actually just cultivating a narrow strip as opposed to cultivating the whole area.
So with these model farms, if you like, that you're experimenting with, what sort of results are you getting?
Well, for the last 2 years we've had no difference in yield whatsoever. So we're taking the grain and weighing it and doing moisture content. So the last 2 years, no difference at all. We have noticed a little bit difference this season in terms of the development of the plants. It was a very cold, wet spring. So anywhere that's a little bit colder, like on a direct drill site, as opposed to a conventional site, which is a little more fluffy, warms up a little more.
Right.
But I would suspect that we will have no difference at the end of the season. So we're going to take these trials through for another 5 years, so we'll get some good data. And on top of that, we've also got down at Tokenuit, the new Ag Research $6 million farm down there. We've also got some direct drill and strip till and conventional trials on there.
And how are they going?
Well, this is only the first year that we've had those
so
going.
Got a little while to go.
Little while to go.
Just listening to you talk about the results you've had so far with your experiments and no great increase in production at all, it doesn't sound like zero tillage is really the silver bullet for a lot of our maize growers. Is that right?
Well, it might appear that, but I mean, one of the biggest costs to a maize grower is cultivation. And so if you're zero tilling, there's only the cost of perhaps putting slug bait down as opposed to $300 a hectare in cultivation costs. And on top of that, we're conserving our soil. We're not breaking down the organic matter as much. We're not breaking down the soil structure as much. So there are other advantages apart from the economics, even though we might not be increasing yield, but we're certainly not decreasing yield.
What sort of interest are you getting from farmers?
At the moment, it's, to be honest, is fairly low interest, but that's why we brought Ed over from the States, because we think it's something that could aid growers, and certainly in the rest of the arable industry, and in terms of wheat and barley and those sort of crops down in Canterbury, there's considerable interest.
So I was just going to ask you, I mean, here we are in the Waikato, and of course the huge emphasis in this area because of all the dairying is on maize, but is zero tillage attracting many cereal growers of other grains?
Certainly, and of course, even in the maize industry where we do maize silage, we normally go back to a ryegrass or some other crop, so that's normally direct drilled. So the concept is not unknown, of course. It's very well and very well adopted, and you all have heard of the Baker Boot and John Baker and zero tillage. So, but in terms of maize, because we need a very regular plant line with even spacing between them, and maize is a very big seed, it's much more difficult to get a good picket line fence, like a picket fence, with regular seed spacing with the big maize seed. So, and this is why we're bringing Ed, because he's made some modification to some of his planters, and I know Chris has adopted some of those. And so that's something that we will take up with Ed.
How does the planter actually work? Does it actually make a round hole in the ground or a slit?
At the moment we're just using conventional maize planters, and so it's they're all vacuum seeders, and they have disc openers and closers. What we've used is residue removers on the front, but I know Ed's made some further modifications. Now, at our arable site we've got a particularly what I would call a light, easy, friable soil. It's called a Horotū silt loam. Direct drilling works very well on that sort of soil, but direct drilling doesn't necessarily work on all soils, and moisture contents and all those sort of things come in as well. So what we need to do is sort of look at what Ed is doing, and then maybe make some modifications, and so that we can broaden it out to other soil types and other areas and this sort of thing. So
not only soil types are important, I guess, but also the timing for when you actually do this.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in the spring, if we have a wet spring followed by a dry period as we had this year, direct drilling becomes a little more difficult.
Why is that?
Because where the furrow openers come along, with the disc openers I should say, to put the seed in, you can get sort of drying of the sidewalls, and so that you get this sort of little narrow slit. And sometimes it makes it difficult for the seed, if we get drying, to get up out of the ground. So sometimes plant population becomes a little bit of an issue, but that's something we hope to work around with some of the work that Ed's been done, and attract growers to the idea of zero tillage in maize.
Indeed. Is there any advantage in zero tillage as far as pest control, insect pests and weeds is concerned?
In terms of, it's probably a little bit more difficult in terms of pests, particularly slugs, and should there be snails as well, but we normally put slug bait down, as we do with strip tillage as well. So that really becomes the only cost in terms of cultivation or lack of cultivation. And sometimes, because we've got in long-term grain ground, we have crop debris there. We can get some carryover of certain leaf diseases. We have a disease in this country called northern corn leaf blight, which overwinters in long-term maize ground, and so we have got that crop debris on the surface, and you're not cultivating it under. There can be more issues of leaf diseases given the right weather conditions, but generally not a great problem.
Well, very interesting insight into just what FAR's doing on this whole question of zero tillage. So thanks very much for your time today, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike Parker there from the Foundation for Arable Research. I'll be back very soon with another edition of Sector Report. Until then, take care.